Back in the year 2005, Naughty Dog released Uncharted 4: A Thief No More, an incredible gaming marvel which set the bar for graphics, storytelling, and platforming. Until exactly 1 year later when it was completely eclipsed in every way by Just Dance 2017. Let's face it, while Uncharted had nuanced characters like camera operator Jeff and Olive Garden, they just couldn't keep up with Ubisoft classics like Justin Bieber and Hatsune Miku. Still, Uncharted 4 is so much more innovative than other games of its era, such as Super Mario Wonder, GTA 2, or The Legend of Zelda: The Adventure of Link, and I can say with tears in my eyes that it's the best game I have ever played. The only other game I've played so far is Harvest Moon Mad Dash, but Uncharted is still the better of the two. Our story begins with Nathan Drake living in Costco because his parents forgot him there by mistake, where he waits to be executed for knocking over a stack of beans. That very night, he spots Santa Claus on a nearby rooftop and makes a break for his gift bag, inspired by the movie Elf, but falls off the roof and dies, inspired by the movie The Santa Claus. And now that I think about it, I also played that game a time or two, and Uncharted is better than that one also. Turns out it's not Santa, but his old pal Chris Rock, who takes him back to the North Pole to read him a bedtime story, where to their dismay, a crazy witch is currently at their house mid-robbery snatching their loot. She tries to cast a spell, but doesn't have the required mana cost, and it backfires, leaving behind just enough XP for Chris to level up, and her magic spellbook, which Nathan takes to become a mage. Once he's discovered for being a wizard, the authorities lock him in Rapunzel's tower while they search for a dragon to feed him to, the local punishment for magicians here in town. Thankfully, the book has already taught him a basic teleportation spell, and after he says the magic words, onion, 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 river dance, he finds himself back home with his allies, Chris Rock and Rafiki. Uh-oh, Mayor Goodburger is here, talking mad smack about M&Ms. I'm not sure if he means the wrapper or the candy, but either way is a good reason to throw down. After a brief tickle fight, the gang gets sent to the principal's office where Nathan is given a triple detention and a lecture on integrity, and they serve the rest of their sentence with nothing bad happening, I swear for real. Once home on British soil, Nathan begins method acting for his role in the upcoming Aquaman musical when he spies a large Tetris block he can loot for coins, so he calls in a summons in the form of a giant crane to kidnap it. The FBI shows up and serves him a cold hard cease and desist, but he serves the agent a cold hard "why don't you cease to exist?" and Officer Gilroy runs home weeping, case closed. Back at the lab, Nathan examines the loot from the raid, including the Beyblade of Destiny, the Pop Rocks of Mysticism, and a single chubby cheese token. But he goes wacky off those Pop Rocks and hallucinates goblins, shooting everything to pieces to protect his treasure. Don't do drugs, kids. The main protagonist, Elena, tries to tell him about this cool new recipe for paper mache she learned using human hair and coffee grounds, but he falls in love with the painting mid-convo, leading to this huge beef between the two of them that will likely lead to either a diss track or a divorce, or if it escalates, both. While Nate is in the booth cooking up some fire bars, Chris Rock shows up, back again and about time too, to warn Nathan that if he doesn't change his ways, Tiny Tim will die on Christmas morning. Nathan is indifferent. Through a series of unexplainable coincidences, the two run into each other again right beside Mickey's Magic Castle at Disneytown and make plans to swipe the frozen head of Walter Disney himself and get some of that cash. Their stealth mission kind of falls apart when Smokey, the old gremlin of riddles, stops them in their tracks with three intriguing questions. Who are you? Who am I? Who he be? Nathan doesn't know and invokes the fifth, so Smokey wanders the dance floor in search of answers. There he meets a clone who holds him at gunpoint for all he's worth, but he's rescued at just the last minute by, what's this? A surprise guest appearance of Rafiki from earlier, who then proceeds to trash talk Smokey so bad he starts to wish he'd just been robbed instead. Meanwhile, deep in the dungeon of Disney, Nate is Donkey Konging some barrels around because really, what can you do to stop him? This guy tried and he got clobbered for it. Nathan pulls the fire alarm as a practical joke, and the guards chase him around for the crime of being too funny, so he throws them off a cliff and they die. Lego Avengers was also a pretty good one. Look out, Nathan. Karma strikes when you least expect it. Right now in the form of another clone of that one clone from earlier. Nathan believes in chivalry and can't hit a girl, but the clone believes in clone foo and roundhouse kicks him until he dies. Once he respawns in Scotland, Nate is so disgruntled he goes on a shooting spree and guns down like 400 people, and then out of guilt he goes to church to repent, Unfortunately, it's Evil Church by mistake, so a third clone shows up and steals the floor. Waka waka, this is Africa for Nathan Drake and the Treasure Buddies. Chris Rock takes him back to the set of the Madagascar movies where he played the hit character Zebra Cakes, and they swerve around in a Jeep for a while. They hand the wheel to the only guy without a license, and that pays off as well as anyone could have expected. Thankfully, it only takes a minute for the mighty Nathan Drake to pull them back up off the cliff to safety. Then he just drives off the cliff anyway. Nobody's gonna tell him how to live his life. Because of this, he is sentenced to judgment before the 4 lords of this realm: Orson, Balthazar, Anthem, and Dwight. They present him 3 riddles, which he must answer correctly to progress, but I already did that bit. So instead, he just sounds the bell of decay and rings in the destruction of the mortal realm, then peels out of there before anyone can point out he cheated. Breaking news in celebrity drama: Elena's husband's wife has found out about the treasure, and she's a hoppin' mad. Turns out she wanted to come along for the ride, but Nate served her the old "no girls allowed," so she came to drop off an unfair hiring practices lawsuit. He gives her the old "why don't you cease to exist?" which doesn't make any sense in this context. But his hype men are pumping him up so much it doesn't really matter, and she goes home crying as he emotes on her. Because no one ever learns their lesson, they once again let the most inept driver in the world behind the wheel of a vehicle, only this time they took extra precautions by doing it during a hurricane, and wouldn't you know it, he crashes instantly. Chris Rock decides that now is the time to reveal his true intentions and murder Nathan for the gold, but he messes it up like a klutz, and Nate is onto him now. He'll have to try again in an hour or two when he least suspects it. While jumping around like a dunce for reasons I don't understand, Nathan runs into yet another clone of the same person. Not sure who's been cloning her, but the battle gets pretty heated until Nate has no option but to jump off the top rope like Hulk Hogan, which obviously doesn't work because pro wrestling is fake. Idiot. Chris Rock pulls out the Chris Glock, which would probably get him DQ'd and absolutely would have shot the clone point blank if not for Nate's quick reminder that that's not the Jedi way. It's at this point that Chris is forced to reveal his deepest, darkest secret that he's been keeping all this time. The real Chris Rock died in a blimp accident 7 years ago. This guy is Chuck Pebble. Nathan is indifferent, but when he mentions the words bald wife, he is instantly killed by Will Smith, who was standing just off screen. Speaking of wives, Nathan Drake finds his at the bottom of a cliff searching for salamanders. Turns out she found the spell book and is brewing a potion that will turn her into a dude so she can join the party. Once again, these imbeciles give Elena's husband control of a vehicle, and surprisingly, everything works out really well this time as he drives off a waterfall and dies. Just kidding, he ends up at the theater and begins his performance he's been training for. Aquaman, The Way of Walter, his one-act show about pollution where they actually drown the audience with real water. It scores an abysmal 3 out of 10 on IMDb, but his solo number of Water's Love goes platinum, and he is awarded with 4 Sand Dollars, and he gets to keep his costume from the performance. As Elena and her husband tour the mansion they're considering for purchase, we slowly get more and more insight towards the story of the game. A true masterpiece that makes Ratatouille look like ratatouille and makes Lord of the Rings look like Lord of the Rings. A tale this thrilling is difficult to sum up so quickly, but here goes. Once upon a time, there was this pirate. Turns out the building has a termite infestation, so they bail on the real estate and go mining instead. The downside of this cave is that there's a lot of exploding mummies. The upside is that there's also no ore. Alert! Alert! This isn't just any cave, it's the Bat Cave from Arkham Origins. And all cards on the table, never finished that one, but it was like an 8 out of 10. Next thing you know, Elena and her unnamed husband end up hanging in the Dungeon of Doom as punishment for trying to escape the Dungeon of Doom. They escape that one as well, but the Fuzz are still holding a grudge over the wizard incident, and their only option is to stow away on a ship belonging to Rafiki and the clones. The incident with the Popo inadvertently reminds Elena's husband that he's a wizard, so he tries to cast an invisibility charm, but stutters on the incantation and launches a fireball spell instead, setting the ship ablaze like a total Hufflepuff. The clone takes off running as fire is her one weakness as Rafiki drops the biggest plot twizzler of them all. He's actually been the main antagonist this entire time, manipulating and killing everyone who opposes him, which confuses Nate because he already knew that. He uses the last of his magic to turn Rafiki into a pile of gold, but the side effect fuses Chuck Pebble to the ship, which presents a new challenge for our heroes to face. Thankfully, everything can be solved with enough violence, and Nate explodes him with a cannon so hard that everything just kind of fixes itself. Don't think about it. Back at the docks, when they finally return home, Chuck turns to Nate and finally admits his deepest, darkest secret that he's been keeping all this time. He was lying earlier. He truly is the real Chris Rock. Nathan is indifferent. The next morning, Nathan is putting the finishing touches on his Declaration of Independence to overthrow the local government and declare this territory Natetown, USA, when the FBI show up once again to announce that he's been declared mayor of the city after the last mayor got eaten by a dragon in prison. Elena shows up too with a contract for him to sign, granting her the job of a local witch and a bribe to make sure it goes through, which she is obligated to take by law of being mayor. Then, we pan out. As a one final trick, we find out that this whole experience was fake. It was nothing but a video game. And who was playing? The dog. Naughty Dog. Sonic Forces, actually.